My own son is on a stage, under a spotlight, auctioning me off for $5. I'm at table 14 in the back. 200 people, Kaylin's colleagues, are staring. Kaylin is smiling, holding the microphone like he's just told the cleverest joke. She's boring, I know, he laughs, and the sound echoes. She just sits at home writing her little stories. Maybe she'll write about you. I sat there, my hands folded on the white tablecloth. The silence was a physical thing. It wasn't just quiet, it was loud with pity. People were looking at me, then quickly looking away, embarrassed for me. Kaylin's smile was starting to stiffen. The joke had failed. "Come on," he pushed. "$5? Anyone?" Then, from the very back, a voice, calm, clear, and cutting through the silence. $1 million. The entire room turned. Not just turned, but snapped around. Kaylin froze. His face went from smug to confused. I'm sorry." A man I didn't recognize was standing. He wasn't in a tux. He was in an expensive-looking dark suit, no tie. He started walking down the center aisle. "I said," the man repeated, his voice carrying easily, $1 million. He stopped by Kaylin's stage, but he didn't look at him. He looked directly at me. At table 14. "My name is Reese Donovan. I'm the head of global content for Netflix, and I've been trying to get a meeting with this woman for 3 months. Kaylin's face was white. "Netflix? What?" Mr. Donovan smiled, a small, tight smile. "You," he said, pointing at Kaylin, "are auctioning off SJ Morrison, and I need to know if she's finally available to discuss the 8-figure adaptation deal we sent her agent." The room exploded. Kaylin looked at me, his eyes wide with a kind of horror I'd never seen. He didn't know. Of course he didn't know. He never listened. He was up there humiliating me, and the one person in the room who knew exactly who I was had been watching the entire time. The sweetest, most terrifying vindication of my life. But to understand how we got to this moment, how my son could look at me and see boring, while a stranger saw a multi-million-dollar deal, I need to take you back. 5 years. To the day I turned 60, and my life, as I knew it, ended. Before we continue, please subscribe to this channel. We're building a community of people who understand that it is never, ever too late to become who you were meant to be. Now, back to the story. The retirement party was in the 3rd-floor conference room at the insurance office. 32 years I'd been there, answering phones, filing claims. 32 years of being Ilara, the reliable one. Janice from accounting had brought a cake. A sheet cake from a grocery store, with that frosting that's more sugar than butter. They'd spelled my name wrong. Elaira. I didn't correct them. I never did. What was the point? It was my last day. People I'd seen every day for decades shook my hand. "You'll love retirement, Ilara. So much time to relax. You've earned it." I smiled and nodded. What I heard was, "You're done." What I heard was, "You are now officially irrelevant." They meant well, but they were handing me a life sentence of sitting on a beige couch. Kaylin wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. He'd sent a text at 1:15 p.m. "Hey, Mom, swamped. Big client. Can't make it. Congrats on retiring. Let's do dinner soon." Soon was Kaylin's word for never. I read it, and a familiar, cold feeling settled in my stomach. I put the phone back in my purse next to the cheap engraved plastic clock they'd given me. 32 years of service. I drove home to my apartment, 1 bedroom, rent-controlled, the one I'd moved into after Kaylin left for college, the one I'd stayed in after my husband, Mark, had left. Well, before that. The apartment was quiet. It smelled like dust and old tea bags. I stood in the living room, the plastic clock still in my hand. 60 years old, divorced, retired. My one son, my Kalen, was a rising star at his finance firm. He wore suits that cost more than my mortgage payment. He spoke a language of acquisitions and portfolios that I didn't understand. And he was distant, not unkind, just gone. Moved into a world that had no space for his boring, simple mother. I looked around my small living room, the thrift store couch, the coffee table with the ring stain I could never scrub out. Everything I owned, everything I was, fit into this 700 square foot box. This was the reward for 32 years. Mark's voice was still there, even after all these years. Don't aim too high, Ilara. You're just not built for it. He'd said it when I mentioned wanting to take a community college class. Why waste the money? I'd believed him. I wasn't smart. I was just reliable. Kalen used to ask, "Mom, why didn't you ever do anything?" He didn't mean it to be cruel. He just observed. The other moms were lawyers, doctors, executives. I was the mom who filed papers. I'd poured everything I had into him, into making sure he could be somebody. And he was. And I was done. I made tea. The clock on the microwave said 4:30 p.m. The rest of my life stretched out in front of me. Decades, maybe, of this silence, of waiting for a text, of being Ilara on a cake. I looked at the couch. I could sit. I could turn on the television. I could just fade. Let the dust settle on me, too. But then I saw it. On the corner of the kitchen table, covered in unopened junk mail. My old laptop. I'd bought it 3 years ago to stay connected, but I never used it. A voice, not Mark's, not Kalen's, but someone from a lifetime ago. A high school English teacher. "You have a fire in you, Ilara. You can write." I'd buried that memory. I'd buried it under 32 years of insurance claims and a failed marriage and a son who had outgrown me. What a joke. A 60-year-old woman with a high school diploma and a plastic clock. What could I possibly have to say? My hands were shaking. I wiped the dust off the lid with my sleeve. I sat down and opened it. The screen glowed, bright and empty. I opened a new document. The cursor blinked, just blinked, waiting. I had nothing. I was nothing, but I was also free. I took a sip of cold tea, and for the first time in my life, I started to type. Chapter 1. I typed for 6 months. At first, the words were terrible, clumsy, awkward. I'd write a sentence, and Mark's voice would be in my head, laughing. "You think you're a writer? You?" I'd read a paragraph and want to delete the whole file. Who was I kidding? A 60-year-old retired insurance filer. But then something else would happen. A character would say something I didn't expect. A woman I'd named Helen, who was 62 and tired of being overlooked. She wasn't me, not really. She was braver. She was the me I'd never been allowed to be. And as I wrote her, I started to feel a little bit of her strength seep into me. The house was quiet, but my head was full. For the first time in my life, I wasn't lonely when I was alone. I woke up at 5 a.m., not with the familiar dread of the workday, but with a jolt of purpose. I'd make coffee and sit at my kitchen table before the sun came up, and I would write. 6 months later, I typed the end. 300 pages, a full book. I stared at it on the screen. I had no idea what to do next. I'd spent my life filing things in a cabinet. How did you file a book? So I learned. I Googled how to get a book published. I learned about agents and query letters and manuscripts. It felt like learning a foreign language. I spent 3 weeks writing a 1-page letter trying to sell my 300 pages. I made a list of 100 agents. I took a deep breath, and I hit send. The first rejection came 6 hours later. A form letter. Not the right fit for our list. It stung, but I expected it. The 10th rejection came a week later. While I enjoyed the premise, I didn't connect with the voice. That one hurt more. The 50th rejection came a month after that. By then I was just numb. Every no was a confirmation of what Mark had said, of what Kaylin implied every time he forgot to call. You're not smart enough. You're not interesting enough. You're nothing. I was on rejection number 74 when Kaylin called. It was a Tuesday. Hey, Mom, just checking in. What are you up to? I made the mistake of being honest. I was feeling low and I just wanted my son. Oh, I said, trying to keep my voice light. I'm just getting another rejection letter for my book. Silence on the line. Then a heavy sigh. Mom, he said, and I knew that tone. It was his I'm the expert voice. I don't want to be mean, but maybe this is a sign. This whole writing thing, it's a nice thought, but how many 60-year-olds get book deals? I had no answer. I'm just being realistic, he continued, the words a gentle, patronizing stream. The publishing world is for, young, fresh voices, people with connections, people with degrees. Not you, he didn't have to say. I felt myself shrink, right there in my own kitchen. My high school teacher always said I had a voice, I whispered. Yeah, Mom. When you were 17. Look, I'm just trying to protect you from disappointment. Why don't you find a hobby that's, more age appropriate? Have you thought about joining a book club instead of trying to write for one? He laughed a little. I didn't. I have to go, Kaylin, I said. Right. Client call. Talk soon, Mom. Chin up. I hung up. I looked at my laptop. I almost deleted the file. A book club. That's all he could see for me. I sent out the last 26 queries. 3 weeks later, an email, not from an agent, a small publisher, a tiny independent press I'd never heard of. Dear Ms. Hartley, we'd like to offer you a publishing contract for The Silent Witness. I read it 7 times. I thought it was a mistake. A contract. They were offering me a contract. It wasn't a lot of money. It was almost no money. But it was real. I called Kaylin. I was so excited I couldn't help myself. This time, I thought, this time he'll be proud. Kaylin, I have news. My book, it's getting published. Whoa, really? He sounded distracted. I could hear typing in the background. That's great, Mom. What's the publisher? Oakwood Press, I said, beaming. Another pause. Oakwood. Press? Never heard of them. Are you sure they're legit, Mom? The joy in my chest went cold. What do you mean? Well, there are a lot of scams out there, especially targeting, older people who want to be writers. Did they ask you for money? Is it a vanity press? No, I said, my voice rising. No, it's a real publisher. They're small, but right, small. Look, that's great, Mom. That's really nice. Just don't go spending your retirement on it, okay? So, what's the advance? $500? He was guessing. He was mocking me. I have to look at the details, I stammered. Yeah, well, you do that. Hey, I gotta run. We're closing a huge deal, but congrats on the book thing. That's different. The line clicked dead. He'd done it again. He'd taken my moment, my one impossible moment, and made it small. Made me small. I signed the contract. I worked with an editor. And 9 months later, a box arrived. Inside were 10 copies of my book. My name on the cover. I held one. I cried. The book came out. Nothing happened. No parties, no interviews. Then, an email. Not a rejection. A message through the publisher's website. Dear Ms. Hartley, it began. I'm 64. My husband passed last year. I thought my life was over. I read your book. Helen, she's me. You made me feel seen. Thank you. I read it. and I knew why I was doing it. It wasn't for Kaylin. It wasn't for the money. It was for this woman. I opened a new document. Book 2. I was halfway through it when Kaylin brought home Isolde. She was perfect, polished and sharp and ambitious, just like him. She shook my hand. So nice to meet you, Alara. Kaylin's told me so much about you. We were at my apartment. I'd cooked. Kaylin tells me you write, she said, sipping her wine. That's so sweet. It must be a cute little hobby. It's a published book, I said, my voice too quiet. Oh, that's adorable. I love that. It's so important to have something to do all day, isn't it? To keep you busy. Keep me busy, like I was a child with a coloring book. Book 2 came out with Oakwood Press. The fan mail grew. Dozens of emails. Women who felt invisible. Women who saw themselves in Helen. I was finding my people, and they weren't in my family. Then, an email from a name I didn't know. Serafina Vance. The email was short. I'm a literary agent. I've been watching your sales. They're small, but your read-through is 90%. Your little publisher has no idea what they're sitting on. Call me. I Googled her. She wasn't just an agent. She was the agent. Bestsellers. Big names. I called her, my hand shaking. Alara, she said, her voice like gravel and silk. You're writing for the most underserved, wealthiest demographic on the planet. Women over 50. And you're doing it well. How fast can you write book 3? Serafina sold book 3 and the rights to my first 2 books to one of the biggest publishers in New York, The Advance. I saw the number and I thought it was a typo. I paid off my apartment. I bought a new couch. Serafina wanted me to use a pen name. Let's build a brand, she said. Something mysterious. I chose SJ Morrison. It felt like a shield, a suit of armor. Alara Hartley was Kaylin's boring mom, but SJ Morrison. She was a bestseller. Book 3 hit the USA Today list. Book 4 hit the New York Times. I was successful. Really, truly successful. I'd made more in the last year than Kaylin would make in 5. Not that I'd tell him that. I invited him and Isolde to dinner. A nice restaurant. My treat. Mom, this place is expensive, Kaylin said, looking around. That's okay, I smiled. I have something to celebrate. Oh, right, my deal closed, he said, raising his glass. Partner track, here I come. That's wonderful, honey, I said. And my book, the new one. It hit the New York Times bestseller list. Kaylin blinked. He put his glass down. Oh, wow, that's really nice, Mom. Good for you. He turned to Isolde. Did I tell you about the Anderson account? Isolde patted my hand. That's just wonderful, Alara. We're so proud of you. It's just so fantastic that you found something that, keeps you so busy. Keeps me busy, the words echoed. I'd just told him I was a New York Times bestseller, and he'd patted me on the head. He'd changed the subject. He didn't ask what number it hit. He didn't ask how it felt. He didn't ask anything. It was just my nice little success. My hobby. The thing that kept his boring old mom from bothering him. I sat there watching my son and his wife talk about their important lives, and I realized he would never see me. He couldn't. He'd decided who I was 30 years ago, and he was never, ever going to look again. I was just his boring mom, and that, I thought, was the last time I would ever let his blindness hurt me. I paid the bill. I went home. And I started writing book 5. I was a professional. I had deadlines. I had an agent who called me daily. I had readers around the world. I didn't need my son's approval. I just wished for 1 second I could have it. I was deep in chapter 10 of book 5. It was the most difficult scene I'd ever written. Helen was confronting her own past. a past I'd been avoiding in my own life. My agent, Serafina, was emailing me every other day. The publisher had a slot, a huge marketing budget, and they needed the final manuscript. The pressure was immense. It was the good kind of pressure, the kind that meant I was a professional, that my work mattered. I was in the zone, the words finally flowing, when my phone rang. Kaylin. I almost let it go to voicemail. I should have. But that old, deep-set instinct, the one that said he needs you, made me pick it up. "Mom, thank God, Mom, I'm in trouble." It was a new tone. Not condescending, not dismissive. It was pure, unfiltered panic. My stomach tightened. "Kaylin, what's wrong? Are you okay?" "No, I'm fine, but this gala, it's falling apart." I had no idea what he was talking about. "What gala?" "The firm's annual charity gala, Mom. It's the event of the year. My boss, Orrin Croft, put me in charge. It's my big test. If I pull this off, he said I'm a shoo-in for junior partner." "But the event planner just quit." She walked. "And it's in 3 weeks. 3 weeks, Mom. And I have nothing. Isolde is swamped. I'm drowning in client work. This is my whole career on the line." He took a breath, and then it came. The line. The one that, despite everything, I still wasn't ready for. And I thought, "You know, I thought of you. You're so good at organizing things and, well, you're just home all day. You're not busy, right? I mean, it's just writing. Just writing." I looked at my screen, at the 70,000 words I'd bled over, at the sales figures from book 4, at the contract Serafina had just negotiated that was worth more than his entire annual salary. Just writing. "Kaylin," I started, my voice weak. I should have said no. I should have said, "I have a deadline. I have a multi-million-dollar career." "I am not your secretary." I should have. But I heard the panic in his voice. I saw the little boy who'd scraped his knee, and the 60 years of habit of putting myself last, of being reliable Ilara, all came flooding back. "This is everything, Mom," he whispered. "Please." I closed my eyes. "Okay," I said. "Okay, Kaylin, I'll help." The next 3 weeks were not just hell. They were a regression. I fell back into a life I'd fought so hard to escape. My manuscript lay untouched. My mornings were no longer for Helen. They were for florists who were non-committal on color palettes. My afternoons weren't for plotting. They were for tasting catering samples and arguing about vegetarian options. My nights weren't for editing. They were for seating charts, moving names on a diagram until 2 a.m., because Kaylin had called to say, "The partners from the West Side office can't sit near the East Side team. Fix it." I was exhausted. I was running on caffeine and fumes. Serafina called. "Ilara, where are you? Where is the manuscript? The publisher is breathing down my neck." I hit a wall," I lied. "I just need a few more weeks. A personal, family thing." I heard her sigh, a sharp, disappointed sound. "Don't let them do this to you, Ilara. Don't let them pull you back. That world, it doesn't deserve you anymore." She was right. But the gala was in 2 days. I was too deep. I was at my apartment, which had become Kaylin's unofficial event headquarters. Boxes of programs were in my hallway. Swatches of fabric were on my new couch. I was on the phone with the AV team, confirming microphone setups, when Isolde let herself in. She was wearing a cream-colored pantsuit, and she looked effortless. She didn't offer to help. She just sipped a water she'd taken from my fridge and watched me. I hung up the phone, my head throbbing. "It's all looking good," I told her. "The final numbers are in." She smiled, a thin, polished smile. "You're just so good at this, Ilara. This stuff." Kaylin walked in then, home from work. He kissed Isolde, then looked at the chaos, at me in my sweatpants and old t-shirt. "Looks under control," he said, nodding. Isolde turned to him, her voice light, like she was sharing a delightful little joke. "It's so great your mom found this, Kaylin. Remember when she was just nothing? Just sitting here all day? At least this book thing led to her being a great little helper. It's a perfect fit. Remember when she was just nothing?" My blood went cold. I stopped. The world, the boxes, the seating charts, everything just stopped. She'd said it. She'd said the quiet part out loud, the book thing, a great little helper. Nothing. Kaylin didn't even flinch. He just laughed. "She's a lifesaver, that's for sure." "Right, Mom?" I didn't answer. I just looked down at my list. "The AV is confirmed," I said, my voice flat. "The floral arrangements arrive at 4 p.m. I'll be there to supervise." I didn't look at them. I just picked up my clipboard. One more day, and I was done. For good. The night of the gala. I was there at 3 p.m. managing deliveries. I'd packed a simple black dress, the one I'd worn to Serafina's last author party. It was nice, but it wasn't a gala dress. I changed in a staff bathroom. I wasn't a guest. I was staff. Kaylin and Isolde arrived at 6, and they were radiant. Him in a custom tuxedo, her in a silver gown that shimmered. They were the picture of power. "Mom, you're still here?" Kaylin said, surprised. "I told you I would be," I said, handing him the final schedule. "Everything is set." Great, you did great, Mom. It looks amazing." He kissed my cheek, a dry, fast peck. "Your seat is at 14. I'd made the seating chart. I knew where table 14 was. In the very back. By the kitchen doors. I nodded. "Have a good night, Kaylin." I sat. I watched. I watched the event I had built unfold. The lighting was perfect. The music was perfect. The flowers were perfect. Kaylin was brilliant. He worked the room, shaking hands, laughing. His boss, Orrin Croft, a man who looked like he'd been carved from granite, was at table 1, and he was smiling. He was smiling at my son. I felt a small, familiar pang of pride. He was my son. And then the auction. It was going well. People were bidding. Money was being raised. Kaylin was glowing. He'd done it. And then he walked up to the microphone. He looked loose, confident, maybe a little drunk on his own success. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice booming, "we have one more special last-minute item." I felt a cold dread creep up my spine. He wouldn't. He looked around, a playful, smug grin on his face. "I'm auctioning off lunch with my wonderful mother." The room tittered. Confused laughter. I froze. He was pointing. He was pointing at me, at table 14. "That's her, my boring mom. She sits at home writing her little stories. Maybe she'll write about you." The laughter was dying. The silence was back. The same silence from my retirement party. The silence of 200 people watching a public execution. The pity. It was burning my skin. "Come on," Kaylin laughed, oblivious. "Let's start the bidding at $5. The silence was unbearable. He was just standing there, smiling, waiting, humiliating me. After everything, after the 3 weeks of 18-hour days, after the seating charts, after nothing. He thought I was nothing. And then, the voice. $1 million. It wasn't a joke. It was a command. The room snapped. Every head, including mine, turned. The man from the back. Walking down the aisle, Rhys Donovan. He stopped. Not at the stage, but in the center of the room. Kaylin was white. I'm sorry, sir." "What?" "I said," Rhys Donovan repeated, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. $1 million. though I'm not bidding on a lunch. I'm bidding on 5 minutes of her time, which based on my last 3 months is nearly impossible to get. He turned, and he looked right at me. At table 14. My name is Rhys Donovan, head of global content, Netflix. A gasp went through the room. Kaylin looked like he was going to be sick. And I've been trying to get a meeting with this woman, Rhys continued, since her agent sent us her last book. You, he said, finally looking at Kaylin, are auctioning off SJ Morrison. A woman at the table next to mine screamed. Not a loud scream, a gasp. "Oh my God," she whispered, grabbing her friend's arm. "It is her! I knew I recognized her! SJ Morrison, I've read all her books!" Phones were coming out. People were standing up. "Wait," someone shouted. "The Silent Witness series? That's SJ Morrison." Rhys Donovan smiled. He spoke to the room, to all of us. "My office has been trying to reach Ms. Morrison for 3 months. We have an 8-figure full-series adaptation deal on the table for all 4 books." He paused, letting the weight of the words land. A deal we were about to pull, because we were told, by her agent, that Ms. Morrison was unavailable, that she was, and I quote, "deeply involved in a personal family matter." We were told she was planning a charity gala for her son. The silence now was a different kind. It was the sound of 200 people connecting the dots, the sound of my son's entire world collapsing. The humiliation was gone. It had lifted off me, and it was moving in a visible wave and crashing down on the man on the stage. And then Orrin Croft, Kaylin's boss, stood up. He wasn't smiling. He walked, not to Kaylin, but right past the stage. He walked all the way to the back, to table 14. The crowd parted. "Ms. Hartley?" he said, his voice deep. I nodded. "Orrin Croft, my wife, Lydia. She's your biggest fan. She's read everything. She thinks Helen is the most important character in modern fiction." He looked at me, then shot one quick, cold look at Kaylin, who was still frozen on the stage. "We had no idea. Kaylin never mentioned. He never mentioned his mother was SJ Morrison." His wife was at his side now, tears in her eyes. You're her? Oh my God, your books. They saved me after I retired. I felt so invisible. And Helen, She was grabbing my hand. People were crowding the table, not with pity, with awe. Rhys Donovan was at my side. "Ms. Morrison, Ilara, my jet is on the tarmac. If you'll have me, I'd like to use my $1 million lunch to finally talk about Helen's future." I looked around. At the phones flashing, at Orrin Croft's wife crying, at Isolde, who looked like she'd seen a ghost, and at Kaylin. My son, still on the stage, small, white, and finally, utterly silent. I stood up. I straightened my simple black dress. "Yes, Mr. Donovan," I said, my voice clear and strong. "Let's talk." I walked out of that ballroom. I didn't run. I walked with Rhys Donovan at my side, and I felt 200 pairs of eyes on my back. I didn't look at table 1 where Isolde was sitting, pale and rigid, like a marble statue. I didn't look at the stage, where my son was standing, a ghost in a tuxedo. I just walked. The cool night air hit my face, and it felt like my first breath. Rhys didn't rush me. He just waited. He talked about production schedules and casting ideas, about how Helen's internal fire was what the audience was craving. He was talking about my work, my little stories. I got home at 3 a.m. I'd turned my phone off 2 hours earlier, not even looking at the screen. I knew it would be a forest fire of missed calls and frantic texts. I didn't care. I slept. For the first time in 3 weeks, I slept, deeply and without dreams. The next morning, I made coffee. The apartment was quiet. The boxes of gala programs were still in the hallway, a monument to a life I was no longer living. I looked at them, not with anger, but with a strange, detached pity. I picked up my phone. It was heavy, like a brick. I kept it off. I wasn't ready. Not for Serafina's triumphant calls, not for the publisher, and certainly not for Kaylin. The doorbell rang at 9 a.m., not a buzz from downstairs. A knock. He must have been waiting for someone to let him in. I looked through the peephole. It was him. Kaylin. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was in wrinkled jeans and a t-shirt I didn't recognize. His eyes were red and swollen. He looked small, like a child. The child I'd spent my life protecting. I opened the door. I didn't say anything. I just stepped aside. He walked in, but he didn't sit on the couch. He just stood in the middle of my living room looking at the floor. He looked at the boxes. I can get these out of here, he whispered. His voice was hoarse. Sit down, Kaylin. He sat at the kitchen table. The same table where I'd written Chapter 1, the same table where he'd dismissed my work time and time again. I sat opposite him. I poured myself coffee. I didn't offer him any. I just waited. He fired me, Kaylin said, the words catching in his throat. No, I said, he didn't. Kaylin looked up, confused. What? He didn't fire you, I said, my voice calm. He's too smart for that. He just reevaluated you, didn't he? Kaylin flinched, as if I'd slapped him. He pulled me aside after you left, after everyone left. The room was empty, just me and him. He was staring at his hands. He asked me, Did you know? Did you have any idea who your mother was? I said nothing. I told him. I said, I knew she wrote books. And he laughed at me, Mom. Orrin Croft laughed in my face. He said, Kaylin, your mother is SJ Morrison. My wife has a standing order for her signed editions. And you called her boring and auctioned her off for $5. He was crying now, silent, ugly tears. He said it wasn't about the client. It was about character. He said, a man who can't see the value in his own family, who is so blinded by his own ego that he dismisses that. He said, that's not just poor judgment, Kaylin. That's a rod. That's a man I can't trust with a multi-million-dollar account or a partnership. He finally looked at me, his eyes full of a shame I'd never seen. I'm so sorry, Mom. I never. And then, the old words. The old familiar script. I'm so sorry, Mom. Please, it was a joke. A stupid, stupid joke. The old Alara would have crossed the table. She would have put her arms around him. She would have said, It's okay, baby. It's okay. We'll fix this. But the old Alara wasn't here. SJ Morrison was. Was it a joke, Kaylin? I asked, my voice quiet, but it cut through his tears. Was it a joke when you told me to join a book club? When you called my publishing deal a scam for old people? Was it a joke when you and Isolde called my work a cute hobby to keep me busy? He paled. He'd thought the apology was for the gala. He didn't understand the wound. Was it a joke 3 weeks ago, I continued, when you begged me to save your career? Because I was just writing. Was that funny, Kaylin? He had no answer. No, I said, setting my cup down. It wasn't a joke. It was what you believed. You believed I was nothing. Because I wasn't you. I wasn't young and I wasn't in finance. And I wasn't important. You didn't see me. You haven't seen me in 20 years. I leaned forward, and I felt calm. The rage was gone. All that was left was a kind of cold, clear, sad truth. I love you, Kaylin. I will always love you. You are my son. But things have to change. Anything, he whispered. Mom, anything. Please. I need you to understand, I said, that I am not just your mother. I am a Lara. I am SJ Morrison. I am a person. My work is not a hobby. It is my career. It is real. And you will treat it as such." He nodded, wiping his face. "I need you to stop expecting me to drop my life, my deadlines, my multi-million-dollar Netflix deals, to plan your parties." He flinched. "Good. And I need you," I finished, "to actually get to know me, the person I am now. Not the person you've kept in a box labeled Mom." He sat there for a long time. Then he nodded, a real slow nod. Isolde, she's ashamed. She said, "We've been awful." "She can call me when she's ready," I said. "But you're here. That's a start." He stood up, looking lost. Can we fix this? Can I fix this?" "We can try," I said. "But you have to do the work, Kaylin, not me." He walked to the door. He paused, his hand on the knob. Which one should I read first?" he asked, his voice small. I almost smiled. "Start with book 1, I said. "The Silent Witness. Helen, she has a lot to teach you." He left. I watched him go. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it for a long, quiet minute. Then I went to my desk. I sat down. I opened my laptop. The manuscript for book 5 was waiting. Chapter 10. Helen was waiting. My phone, still off, was on the desk. I picked it up. I turned it on. It exploded. A flood of texts, of voicemails. Serafina, my publisher, Reese, readers who had somehow found my number. I put it on silent, face down. I was about to open the manuscript when the screen lit up. A call. Kaylin. My fingers hovered over the accept button. The old instinct. He needs you. He's hurting. Fix it. I looked at the ringing phone. Then I looked at my screen, at the words, at Helen. She was in trouble, and only I knew how to save her. I pressed the decline button. The ringing stopped. I smiled. A small smile, just for me. The apartment was quiet. My coffee was getting cold, and the words, they started to come. So, that's my story, and I guess I have to ask, do you think Kaylin's apology was enough, or was I right to let that call go to voicemail? Let me know what you would have done in the comments below, and if my story meant something to you. Please subscribe. I'm learning. I have a lot more to say.